The encounter. The vastness of space had a way of making even the strongest feel insignificant. Captain Lyanna Carter had spent years patrolling the edges of human-controlled space, keeping watch for pirates, smugglers, and the occasional rogue guy. But nothing in her training had prepared her for the eerie distress signal that had been pulsating through the void for the past 4 hours. The signal was unlike anything she'd ever encountered, a rhythmic, almost melodic pulse of energy that sent shivers down her spine. It wasn't human. That much was clear. "Aye. Run a deep scan," Lyanna ordered, her voice steady despite the tension coiling in her gut. Her ship's onboard eye, a calm and calculated presence named Orion, responded immediately. "Scanning. The vessel appears to be of unknown origin. No identifiable human technology. Partial energy signature detected, but heavily fluctuating. It is either damaged or deliberately masking its core." Lyanna leaned forward in her pilot's chair, studying the sleek, elongated shape of the foreign craft on her holo display. It was unlike any ship in the Human Alliance database, smooth, iridescent, and organic-looking, as if it had been grown rather than built. It drifted, motionless, between the shattered remains of an asteroid field, illuminated only by the soft blue glow of its hull. Something about it called to her. She should call for backup. She should wait for the Alliance fleet to send a recovery team. That was protocol. But deep down, she knew they would take one look at this thing and decide it was a threat. The thought of the Alliance dismantling this ship, ripping apart whatever secrets it held, unsettled her more than it should have. Making her decision, she tightened her gloves and initiated docking procedures. The moment Lyanna's boots touched the metallic floor of the alien vessel, she knew something was wrong. The air was thick, not with oxygen, but with something else, something charged and humming just beneath her skin. The walls pulsed faintly, glowing in rhythmic waves that seemed to match the pattern of the distress signal. It wasn't just a ship, it was alive. She moved cautiously, her gloved hand hovering over the sidearm at her hip. The corridors stretched ahead in strange, curving patterns, illuminated by veins of liquid light running along the walls. The silence was absolute, save for the occasional flickering hum of the failing energy systems. Then she heard it. A breath. Shallow. Pained. Lyanna spun, weapon raised, heart hammering against her ribs. There, slumped against the far wall, was the alien. She had seen many strange things in her years of service, but nothing like this. The figure was tall, impossibly so, with a body sculpted like flowing silver. His skin, if it could even be called that, shimmered, fluctuating between metallic hues, and his long, intricate hair was a cascade of crystalline strands that flickered dimly like a dying star. His chest rose and fell in uneven, labored breaths. Lyanna hesitated. The alien's eyes snapped open. They were unlike anything she had ever seen. Two orbs of shifting light, swirling between deep violet and an impossible shade of gold. They locked onto her with an intensity that sent a shiver down her spine. A voice, deep and resonant, filled the space between them. Human. The way he said it carried weight, an edge of both disdain and fascination. Lyanna raised her hand slightly, signaling she wasn't a threat. "I'm Captain Lyanna Carter of the Human Alliance. I received your distress signal." The alien exhaled sharply, struggling to rise. His form was wounded, crystalline veins along his arms cracked and leaking faintly glowing fluid. Yet, even weakened, his presence radiated power. "I require no assistance," he managed, though the way his body trembled told another story. Lyanna arched a brow. "Right. That's why you're bleeding all over your fancy floor." His eyes flashed with something like irritation. "My kind do not seek help from lesser species." Lyanna sighed. "Listen, Glowy, I don't care about your superiority complex. You sent a distress signal. I answered it, so either you let me help, or you can die here alone. Your choice." For a moment, the alien simply stared at her, as if trying to process the sheer audacity of her words. Then, against all odds, A small smirk touched his lips. "You are different." Lyanna shrugged. "Yeah, well, humans tend to surprise people." She crouched beside him, carefully reaching for the medkit strapped to her belt. His body tensed, but he didn't resist as she began scanning his injuries. The readings were erratic, his physiology completely unlike anything she had encountered before. "What's your name?" she asked as she worked, her voice softer now. A pause. Then, reluctantly, he answered, "Zarith Korr." Lyanna nodded. "All right, Zarith. Try not to die on me, yeah." As she patched his wounds, the ship around them groaned, shuddering under an unseen force. Warning lights flickered to life, symbols she couldn't read flashing across the walls. Zarith's expression darkened. "They are coming." Lyanna stiffened. "Who?" "The ones who did this." His gaze met hers, sharp and unwavering. "They will not stop until I am dead." A deep rumble vibrated through the ship, and Lyanna's pulse quickened. "Well," she muttered, gripping her blaster as she pulled Zarith to his feet. "Guess that makes two of us. A bond beyond borders." The ship trembled beneath them, a low, guttural vibration that sent a chill down Lyanna's spine. She tightened her grip on Zarith's arm, keeping him steady as he fought to remain upright. He was heavier than she expected, his body dense with whatever alien biology coursed through his veins. "The ones who did this, who exactly are we dealing with?" she asked, her voice sharp but controlled. Zarith exhaled, his glowing silver skin flickering weakly. "The Dominion." Lyanna swore under her breath. Even in the human alliance's farthest sectors, the Dominion was a whispered legend, a ruthless, intergalactic empire that swallowed entire civilizations and left only hushed ruins in its wake. "They came for me," Zarith continued, his voice trained. "I was an obstacle, a threat to their control." Lyanna stared at him. "Let me guess, you're some kind of rebel leader." His faint smirk returned. "Not quite. A scientist, a traitor in their eyes. I sought freedom, so they sought my destruction." Lyanna let that settle as she pulled up a holographic display on her wristpad, scanning the ship's deteriorating systems. "Well, freedom's overrated. Survival, though. That's the priority right now. And from what I can see, your ship is barely holding together." Zarith gritted his teeth as another violent tremor shook the vessel. "Then we must move quickly. If the Dominion has tracked me here, they will not arrive alone." Lyanna wasted no time. Slipping an arm under his, she guided him forward, deeper into the ship. The corridors pulsed with dying energy, lights flickering in weak intervals. Every few steps, Zarith staggered, his wounds slowing him down. "How much damage did they do to you?" she asked. Zarith exhaled sharply. "Their weapons disrupt the core energy that sustains my people. I am running out of time." Lyanna's jaw tightened. "Not on my watch." They rounded a corner and entered what seemed to be the ship's control center. The consoles were lined with fluid-like holographic displays, shifting symbols Lyanna couldn't understand flickering across the panels. Zarith moved sluggishly to one of the controls, placing his palm against it. The ship groaned. The symbols pulsed brighter for a brief moment before dimming again. Zarith's body tensed, frustration shadowing his features. "They have corrupted my vessel's core. We are defenseless." Lyanna watched him, his pride warring with the truth of his situation. She knew that look. She'd seen it in soldiers who had fought too long, too hard, and still refused to surrender. "You're not out of options yet," she said firmly. Zarith turned to her, skepticism in his strange, luminous eyes. "You believe you can fix what the Dominion has broken." Lyanna stepped up beside him, examining the ship's alien interface. "I don't know about fixing, but I'm damn good at improvising." She pulled a small toolkit from her belt and got to work, her fingers moving swiftly over the unfamiliar technology. She might not have understood the symbols, but she recognized patterns, energy flows, and reactive systems. Zarith observed her, his expression unreadable. You are unlike any human I have encountered. Lyanna didn't look up. I get that a lot. For the first time, there was something in his gaze beyond skepticism, a spark of respect. Then the ship's alarm blared, a deep, echoing chime that sent ice through her veins. Zarith stiffened. They're here. Lyanna spun toward the console. The ship's external sensors had detected movement. 3 incoming vessels, fast, and closing in. Damn it, she muttered. We're out of time. Zarith turned to her. If they breach this ship, they will kill me. And you. Lyanna scoffed, drawing her blaster. Well, aren't they friendly? Zarith studied her for a long moment. You should leave. Take your ship and escape while you still can. Lyanna's head snapped toward him, incredulous. You really don't know humans, do you? Zarith hesitated. I know of your kind. Then you should know we don't run from a fight, she said firmly. Zarith's lips parted slightly, surprise flickering across his face. You would risk yourself for me. Lyanna shrugged. I tend to make bad life choices. The ship shuddered violently, and Lyanna instinctively grabbed his arm to steady them both. The energy pulse of enemy weapons rocked the failing structure. Zarith gritted his teeth. The Dominion will not stop, he warned. Even if we survive this wave, more will come. Lyanna smirked. Then we better make sure we survive. For a long moment, Zarith simply stared at her. Then, against all logic, he let out a quiet laugh, low and rough, almost disbelieving. You are reckless. She grinned. I prefer resourceful. The ship's warning sirens blared louder. They had mere minutes before the Dominion broke through. Zarith straightened, rolling his shoulders despite the pain that flashed across his face. Then let us show them what your reckless kind is truly capable of. Lyanna cocked her blaster. Now that's more like it. The lights flickered, and in the dim, pulsing glow of the dying ship, a silent understanding passed between them. They would fight. Together. Enemies among the stars. The ship trembled under the onslaught of enemy fire. Each blast sent a shudder through the walls, making the dimly lit corridors flicker with unstable energy. Lyanna braced herself against the control console, cursing under her breath. The Dominion wasn't wasting time. They were coming in fast and hard. Zarith stood beside her, his posture tense despite his wounds. His silver skin flickered weakly, the glow in his crystalline veins dimming. He was still recovering, but time wasn't on their side. Lyanna tapped at the alien console, her fingers working with practiced efficiency. The Dominion's forces had already disabled most of the ship's systems, but she refused to believe they were completely out of options. Tell me there's something on this ship we can use to fight back, she muttered. Zarith's jaw tightened. Weapons systems are compromised. Shields are down. That's not the good news I was hoping for, Lyanna said, glancing at him. Zarith's expression darkened. The Dominion does not attack without certainty. They would not have engaged unless they believed we were already dead. Lyanna turned back to the screen, eyes scanning the ship's diagnostic readings. The Dominion ships were closing in, their signatures glowing red against the black void of space. If they didn't act now, they wouldn't get another chance. Lyanna inhaled sharply. All right then. If we can't fight them head-on, we outmaneuver them. Zarith frowned. My ship is barely operational. Maneuvering is not an option. Lyanna shot him a grin. Then it's a good thing I brought my own ride. She tapped her wrist communicator. Orion, bring the rogue star to my location. Now. A brief silence. Then her eyes' voice crackled through the comms. Acknowledged, Captain. Estimated arrival in 3 minutes. Zarith arched a brow. You named your ship Rogue Star. Lyanna smirked. Seemed fitting. The alien warlord gave her a long, unreadable look before shaking his head. You truly are unlike any human I have encountered. She tapped her blaster against her hip. Stick around, you might actually start to like us. Another explosion rocked the ship, sending sparks cascading from the ceiling. The Dominion was boarding. Zarith's grip tightened around the edge of the console. "They are here." Lyanna turned to him. "Then let's give them a welcome they won't forget." The corridors of the ship were eerily silent. Lyanna moved with careful precision, blaster raised, her heart pounding in steady rhythm. Zarith walked beside her, his movements slower but still controlled. Despite his injuries, there was a lethal grace in the way he carried himself. "They will not hesitate to kill you," he said quietly. Lyanna snorted. "Yeah, I figured that much." Zarith hesitated, then added, "They will not hesitate to kill me either." Lyanna glanced at him. "I thought you were their priority." "I am," Zarith said, his expression unreadable. "But to the Dominion, a traitor is no better than an enemy. There is no mercy for those who defy them." Lyanna's grip on her blaster tightened. "Then we don't give them a chance." A distant clang echoed through the ship. They were coming. Lyanna pressed herself against the wall, motioning for Zarith to do the same. His tall frame moved fluidly into the shadows, his silver skin dimming as he controlled the bioluminescence within his body. They waited. The Dominion soldiers appeared seconds later, 4 figures clad in dark armor, their movements precise and calculated. They carried sleek, plasma-based weaponry, their visors glowing with an eerie blue light. Lyanna met Zarith's gaze. No words were needed. They struck as one. Lyanna fired first, her blaster's shot slicing through the air and hitting the lead soldier square in the chest. The Dominion warriors reacted instantly, but Zarith moved faster. In a blur of silver light, he lunged, his hands moving with deadly efficiency. He grabbed one soldier by the throat, his crystalline veins surging with power, and crushed the armor as if it were paper. The Dominion warrior's body went limp. Lyanna ducked under a retaliatory blast, rolling forward and firing 2 rapid shots into another soldier's helmet. The visor cracked, the Dominion warrior collapsing with a choked gasp. The last soldier turned to flee, but Zarith was faster. He grabbed the warrior's weapon, twisting it out of his hands, then drove his fist into his chest. A sickening crunch echoed through the corridor. The soldier slumped to the ground. Lyanna exhaled, stepping over the bodies. "Damn, remind me not to piss you off." Zarith wiped glowing Dominion blood from his hand. Noted. Before they could catch their breath, Lyanna's wrist communicator crackled to life. "Captain, Rogue Star has arrived. But be advised, enemy reinforcements are inbound." Lyanna glanced at Zarith. "Time to go." Zarith's eyes flickered toward the bodies, then back to her. "You do not have to do this, human. You owe me nothing." Lyanna rolled her eyes. "Are we seriously doing this now? I'm not leaving you here to die." He hesitated. "You risk much." She smirked. "I do tend to have that problem." Another explosion rocked the ship, shaking the walls. Lyanna grabbed his arm, pulling him forward. "Come on, Glowy. Let's get out of here before we're vaporized." Zarith allowed himself to be led, his expression unreadable. But as they ran through the crumbling corridors, he couldn't shake the thought that this reckless, infuriating human might just be the most dangerous force he had ever encountered. Not because of her weapons, not because of her skills, but because, against all logic, she had chosen to fight for him. The dance of fire. Lyanna and Zarith sprinted through the collapsing corridors, the dying ship groaning around them as Dominion forces closed in. The air was thick with smoke and static charge, the failing energy conduits sparking against the walls like dying embers. Each explosion behind them sent a shockwave through the structure, but Lyanna kept moving, her grip firm on Zarith's arm as she pulled him toward the docking bay. "Rogue Star is waiting, but she won't hold position forever," Lyanna shouted over the chaos. "Can you still move, or am I gonna have to carry you?" Zarith shot her a glare, his silver skin darkened with bruises and Dominion blood. "I am not a burden, human." Lyanna smirked. "Then keep up, Glowy." The docking bay doors hissed open, revealing the sleek, midnight black shape of the rogue star hovering just beyond the airlock. The ship's thrusters flared in the darkness, the boarding ramp already extended. Then the Dominion arrived. The first wave of soldiers stormed through the opposite entry point, their heavy boots clanking against the deck. Their weapons flared to life, plasma bolts screaming through the air. Lyanna ducked, dragging Zarith behind a stack of fallen cargo crates. "We don't have time for this," she muttered. Zarith exhaled sharply, pressing his hand against a wound on his side. "Then we must make time." Lyanna's lips curled into a grin. "Now you're speaking my language." She twisted around the edge of the crate, firing 2 quick shots. One of the Dominion soldiers staggered back, armor scorched, before crumpling to the floor. The others advanced, their firepower intensifying. Zarith inhaled deeply, then stood. Before Lyanna could stop him, he lifted his hands. The air around them shimmered. The Dominion soldiers hesitated. Then, a pulse of energy exploded outward from Zarith's body, rippling like a shockwave of light. The Dominion warriors staggered, their visors flickering with static interference. One of them convulsed, his weapon slipping from his grasp. Another let out a strangled gasp as his armor locked up. Lyanna blinked. The hell was that? Zarith's breathing was ragged, his silver skin flickering erratically. A disruption wave. Last resort. Lyanna grinned. "I like your last resorts." She didn't waste time. Taking advantage of their momentary advantage, she surged forward, blasting the remaining soldiers with precise shots. Zarith, despite his weakened state, moved with fluid lethality, dispatching the final Dominion warrior with a swift strike to the throat. The path to the rogue star was clear. Lyanna grabbed Zarith's arm. "Let's go." They sprinted up the boarding ramp as Orion's voice crackled through the comms. "Captain, Dominion reinforcements are deploying fighters. I suggest immediate departure." Yeah. Working on it." Lyanna shouted, slamming her palm against the airlock control. The boarding ramp retracted as the ship's doors sealed shut. Zarith collapsed into the co-pilot's seat, his breathing heavy. "They will not let us escape so easily." Lyanna smirked, strapping herself into the pilot's chair. "Good thing I never make it easy." The rogue star's thrusters roared as she yanked the controls, sending the ship into a steep ascent. The docking bay walls blurred past them as they shot into the blackness of space. Then the Dominion fighters appeared. 3 sleek, angular vessels peeled away from the main fleet, their engines glowing a deep, menacing red. Orion's voice remained unnervingly calm. Incoming fire detected. Lyanna's hands flew over the controls. "Let's see if they can keep up." The rogue star twisted sharply, banking hard to the right as the first barrage of plasma fire sliced past their hull. The Dominion ships pursued, their weapons lighting up the void. Zarith, his strength slowly returning, studied the display. "Your vessel is fast, but they outgun us." Lyanna grinned. "They can't hit what they can't catch." She slammed the throttle forward. The rogue star lurched, its engines howling as it surged ahead. Stars blurred around them, the Dominion ships struggling to close the gap. The enemy pilots adapted quickly, adjusting their trajectory. One fighter surged ahead, attempting to cut off their escape. Zarith's eyes narrowed. "They're trying to force us into their fleet's firing range." Lyanna's grin widened. "Then let's give them something unexpected." She killed the thrusters. The rogue star suddenly decelerated, inertia pressing them hard against their seats. The Dominion fighters, caught off guard, overshot their target. Before they could react, Lyanna re-engaged the thrusters, spinning the ship into a tight barrel roll. She twisted the controls, bringing the ship's weapons online. "Orion, give me a firing solution." Targeting locked. Lyanna pulled the trigger. Twin plasma cannons roared to life, a concentrated burst of energy slicing through the lead Dominion fighter. The ship detonated in a spectacular explosion, debris scattering into the void. The remaining 2 fighters banked sharply, adjusting their attack pattern. Zarith's hands moved over the console, his fingers glowing faintly as he interfaced with the ship's systems. Their formations rely on predictive movement. If we break pattern. Lyanna cut him off. Say no more. She jerked the controls, sending the rogue star into a series of unpredictable, erratic maneuvers. The Dominion pilots struggled to lock onto them, their shots missing by inches. Zarith's eyes gleamed. They are losing their advantage. Lyanna grinned. And we're about to take ours. She executed a sharp reverse thrust maneuver, sliding the ship directly behind one of the fighters. Before the enemy could react, she fired. The second Dominion ship erupted in flames. The final fighter hesitated. Zarith leaned forward, his voice low. Your choice, Dominion pilot. Retreat or be destroyed. For a moment, the last enemy ship hovered in indecision. Then, with a final burst of its thrusters, it turned tail and fled toward the fleet. Lyanna exhaled, letting out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. That's what I thought. Zarith turned to her, something unreadable in his glowing eyes. You are a remarkable pilot. Lyanna chuckled. And you're a terrifyingly good co-pilot for a guy who was half dead 10 minutes ago. Zarith smirked. We make an effective team. She gave him a sidelong glance. Yeah, we do. For a moment, silence filled the cockpit, save for the steady hum of the ship. Then, Lyanna's expression grew serious. We're not out of the woods yet. The Dominion won't just let you go. Zarith's face darkened. No, they will come for me again. Lyanna studied him. Then maybe it's time we stop running. His eyes met hers. You have a plan. A slow, mischievous grin spread across Lyanna's face. Oh, I always have a plan. An unlikely future. The stars stretched endlessly before them, a sea of cosmic fire and uncharted darkness. The rogue star drifted in the safety of a remote sector, its engines cooling after the high-speed chase. The Dominion fleet was still out there, regrouping, hunting, but for now, they had vanished into the void. Lyanna leaned back in the pilot's seat, letting out a slow exhale. All right, we bought ourselves some time. Now what? Zarith, seated beside her in the co-pilot's chair, was silent for a long moment. His silver skin still flickered faintly with residual energy, his crystalline veins glowing dimly in the dim cockpit lights. They will come again, he said finally, his voice measured. They do not abandon a hunt. Lyanna glanced at him. Yeah, I figured. But we can't just keep running. Zarith's fingers curled against the console. I am an exile. A traitor. They will never stop until I am eradicated. Lyanna arched a brow. So what? You just accept that. His gaze flickered to her, surprise crossing his features. You misunderstand. There is no alternative. Lyanna stood, crossing her arms. Bullshit. Zarith blinked. You think you're the only one who's ever been hunted. Lyanna continued. The only one who's ever had an entire damn empire trying to wipe them off the map. Humanity's been there. We fought against impossible odds before. And you know what? We don't just accept it. We fight back. Zarith was silent. Lyanna stepped closer, lowering her voice. You have knowledge of the Dominion's technology. Their fleet movements. Their weaknesses. You don't have to run. You can fight with us. Zarith studied her, something unreadable in his expression. And why would you help me? Lyanna sighed. I already told you. We don't leave people behind. And whether you like it or not, you're one of us now. Zarith's lips parted slightly, as if the thought had never occurred to him. He had spent so long as an outcast, an enemy of his own people. And yet here she was, this reckless, infuriating, brilliant human, offering him something he had never considered. A future. You would trust me? He asked quietly. Lyanna smirked. I haven't decided yet. But you did help me blow up a few Dominion fighters, so you're off to a good start. Zarith exhaled a short, disbelieving chuckle. You are unlike any human I have ever encountered. Lyanna grinned. Yeah, you keep saying that. The cockpit fell into a quiet lull. The weight of their choices, of the battle ahead, hung between them like an unspoken truth. Then softly, Zarith spoke again. If I fight with you, then I fight for your people. Lyanna met his gaze. Not for us. With us. Something in his crystalline eyes shifted. He extended his hand toward her, a slow, deliberate movement. Then let this be our pact. Lyanna stared at his outstretched hand for a moment before clasping it firmly. A pulse of warmth passed between them, not just physical, but something deeper. Trust. An alliance forged in the fire of battle. Perhaps even something more. Lyanna squeezed his hand once before releasing it. Welcome to the rebellion, Glowy. Zarith shook his head, a faint smile touching his lips. You are impossible, and you're stuck with me now. Outside the viewport, the stars stretched on, an infinite battlefield, a canvas of unclaimed victories. The fight against the Dominion wasn't over, not even close. But as the rogue star turned toward the unknown, the future no longer seemed so uncertain. For the first time in a long time, Zarith Korr was no longer running. He was ready to fight.